From Bella Vista Community Television, The City with Damon Wallace. The City with Damon Wallace, a program exploring the happenings in Bella Vista and our surrounding. And now, here's Damon.
And welcome to this episode of The City. I'm Damon Wallace, your host today, and we have an interesting show for you. We have elections coming up this next year for district court judge, and so we have both candidates that are running for it on our show today. They can tell you a little bit more about what the district court does, as well as something about their candidacy. So our first guest today is Mr. David Bailey, and good to have you with us, David.
Thank you for having me.
And David is a candidate for the district court judge position. And so I want to go ahead and get right on into it. What does the district court do?
So district court has two components. There's a criminal component, that's your traffic tickets and misdemeanors. And there's a civil component, which is civil matters up to $25,000. And there's also a small claims component where people can do it themselves, kind of like people's court or you would see on TV for up to $5,000. And small claims court lawyers don't participate.
Okay. And they also handle a lot of the traffic violations, is that right?
That's correct, yes.
Okay. And so what kind of traffic violations do you normally see in a district court?
We see everything from speeding, careless driving. We see more serious traffic infractions like, unfortunately, we see cases like driving while intoxicated or DWI. Those are some of the more common ones.
Okay. Now, you bring up about DWI. We've had some name changes over the years. I know back in the 80s we called it DWI, and then it kind of became DUI. What are some of those differences?
Well, Arkansas still calls it DWI. Oklahoma, for example, calls it DUI, driving under the influence. It's basically the same statute, same crime. It's just some states call it DUI, whereas Arkansas calls it DWI.
Okay. And about how many cases do you see of that every year?
Unfortunately, too many. I don't have an exact number to give you, but I can tell you I see them every week. I'm the prosecutor in this particular court and have been for 17 years, and so every Tuesday I have court, and I wish I could tell you that the numbers have gone down. I feel like the numbers in the 17 years that I've done it have actually gone up on DWI offenses.
Did you notice any kind of uptick? I know Arkansas up in Benton County was dry for so long, and then it became wet here several years ago. Did you see an uptick then?
I don't know. I've seen an uptick, but I don't know if that's the correlation. I think part of the correlation I've noticed is this is in Siloam Springs District Court where I'm the prosecutor, is that several years ago the casino over on the West Siloam Springs side started serving alcohol. Prior to that, when they were like Cherokee Bingo, they didn't have alcohol. And it seemed like almost overnight when they started serving alcohol, at least in my court there in Siloam Springs, we really noticed a difference.
Okay. And you also talk about, just some minor small claims court. And what kind of cases do you normally see in those?
Well, a small claims court is kind of a do-it-yourself court. It's where people without attorneys can try to settle their differences up to $5,000. It could be someone could owe you some money, or they have your property and you're trying to get it back. Things like that. They're really fun cases to hear. I've got to hear a few of them as a special judge years ago, and I was asked to fill in. They call it special judge, and I got to hear some small claims cases, and they're really fun because the lawyers aren't there, the rules of evidence are relaxed, and people can just tell their story and get it out. And so I really found the small claims court very interesting.
Okay. Now we have district court, but then we also have circuit court.
Yes, sir.
And I know there's a race going on in that for circuit court in this area also coming up. So what's the difference between district court and circuit court?
Well, circuit court hears higher level offenses. On the criminal side, they hear felonies. In circuit court, you have a right to a jury trial. You do not get that right to a jury trial in in district court. There is no juries in district court. You also hear things like family law cases, your divorces, adoptions, guardianships, probate. All that goes to circuit court. Circuit court is what they call your court of general jurisdiction. That's where you actually have a record made with the court reporter and things like that. We don't have court reporters and things like that in district court.
Okay. And you talked about the felonies and stuff. That's only heard in circuit court?
Correct.
Okay. Now, we talked about this when we were going over some of the questions, and you have a right to a quick trial. What does a quick and speedy trial in Arkansas actually mean?
It's in the criminal side. A person charged with a crime, whether it's a speeding ticket, a DWI, or a murder in the first degree, circuit court or district court, you have a right to speedy trial within 1 year of the date that the charges have been filed. Now, sometimes trials take longer than that because, and you see that a lot, particularly on the felony cases, they don't usually get to trial in 1 year exactly, because a lot of time the defense counsel will ask for a continuance. Well, that time is excluded from the speedy trial rule, so the prosecutor is not bound by those months of exclusion if the defense asks for the continuance. Now, if the prosecutor asks for the continuance, that time does count against that 1 year.
Okay.
So you have to be really careful about that as a prosecutor.
Okay. And so you don't have the right to a jury trial in district court. So what happens if you want a jury trial?
So what happens in district court is to get a jury trial, you have to go to circuit court. And the way you do that is through an appeal. So if you have a trial in district court and you lose and don't like the result, you have a right to appeal to circuit court, and it starts what they call de novo, meaning it starts all over again. The prosecutor has to have a whole new trial. At that point, the defendant can ask for a jury if he or she wants to. Okay.
So how long have you been practicing?
I've been practicing law for 23 years, a little over 23 years.
Okay. And a lot of people don't realize that Bella Vista actually had obtained their own court facility for district court not too long ago. And so a district court judge is for all of Benton County. Is that right?
It's countywide elected, and so it's really countywide jurisdiction. However, they divide the workload up to where one district judge will primarily preside in, say, Rogers or Bentonville or Gentry or what they call Benton County West, or in this particular one is primarily located in Siloam Springs.
Okay.
But you do hop around quite a bit doing different things.
Okay. So now we also here in Arkansas, we have a county judge.
That's right.
So what's the difference between a county judge and a district judge?
So one of the questions I get asked most often on the campaign trail when I tell them I'm running for judge is, well, can you fix my road? And my response is, I live out in the county and I can't fix my own road. I wish I could, but I can't. County judge is different than the type of judgeship that I'm running for in several instances. For one is, to be a county judge in the state of Arkansas, you don't have to be a licensed attorney like you do to be a district judge or circuit judge. It's really more akin to a mayor. It's the county's version of a mayor. The mayor would preside over the city council in a mayor-city council form of government. The county judge presides over the quorum court, which have justices of the peace, which is kind of like your alderman.
Okay. Now, so let's talk a little bit about your candidacy.
Sure.
So you have how many years experience?
A little over 23.
Okay. And you've been the prosecuting attorney for the Siloam Springs
yes,
area?
Yes, for a little over 17 years now.
Okay. And what are some things that you want to do going into the district court?
Sure. Well, our judge is retiring after about 30 years on the bench, and I've learned a lot from him. His compassion for people. He's been a good mentor to me as far as that goes. But I want to do a couple things differently than it's never been done in this particular court. For one thing, I want to do a night court option, giving people the option to come to court at night, particularly if they work during the day. That way they don't miss a paycheck. They don't possibly lose their job if missing too much work. And it's more convenient for them. So we'll have a night court option. We've never done that in this court before, and I want to be the first to do that. And what I'm really excited about is I want to do a veterans treatment court. Veterans treatment courts around the country are fairly new. A lot of people don't know anything about them. It's the focus on the veterans treatment court is to get treatment for a veteran that comes into the court system, find out why he or she came into the court system, right? It could be prescription drug issue or an illegal drug issue brought on by a dependency that maybe was created by their combat-related injuries. Oftentimes you see that. It could also be PTSD or a mental type issue that's brought on by their combat. And so the issue is to find out why are they here, what really brought them into the system, and get them on a treatment plan, and as opposed to a punishment plan.
Okay, and so it's somewhat so a lot similar to the drug court.
Yes.
That Tom Smith, right?
It's actually modeled after the drug court model.
Okay.
And Judge Tom Smith actually has a veterans treatment court going right now on the circuit court level. But to my understanding, no one on the district court level right now has one, so I would like to be the first.
Okay. And so you also, as a district court judge, you will work with the legislature, and you've done that in the past as a prosecuting attorney.
I have.
What was that over?
So a little over 3 years ago, the state of Arkansas had a problem. We had out-of-state drunk drivers coming in from Oklahoma or Missouri and surrounding states, and due to a technicality in the law, they were actually getting off scot-free. And a lot of people didn't know that. But it was affecting me greatly because as prosecutor for Siloam Springs, West Siloam Springs, Oklahoma is right there. As I mentioned earlier, the casino is there. It's like 100 yards from the state line roughly. And so this technicality I was seeing more and more in my court. And I didn't like it. And I got ticked off, to be honest with you. So what I did is I got with Senator Jim Hendren and Representative Robin Lundstrom, and the three of us worked and created a bill that the two of them really ran through Little Rock, and I give them a lot of credit for that. And we got this loophole fixed about 3 years ago, so it's no longer a loophole. And I'm proud of that because it helped keep the streets safe. And I think that should be a top priority for judges. And that'll be a top priority for me, actually.
Okay. Well, it's a lot of very good information, David. And so we want to encourage you, if you don't know a lot about these court races, definitely go check out David's website, David Bailey. What is the website?
It's votebailey.com.
Votebailey.com. And you can learn more about him and about the district court system. The election is
March the 3rd.
March the 3rd, the primary.
Yes, sir.
Okay. And so we do thank you for coming on today.
Thank you.
David.
Appreciate it. Appreciate you.
And we'll take a break and we'll be right back.
You're watching The City. We'll be right back. Welcome back. Here's Damon and his guest.
Okay, and welcome back from the break. We had a good interview with Mr. David Bailey, who is running for district court judge. And this is his opponent now. We don't have boxing gloves on them, but they've been friends for a long time. This is Mr. A.J. Anglin. And good to have you with us today, AJ.
Hey, thank you for letting me come here today.
Okay, so we're going to talk a little bit more about what a district court judge does. But one of the things that here in Arkansas several years ago, we went to nonpartisan races with the elected judge positions. And more to make sure that everybody looked at the judgeships as being fair, not leaning to one side or the other, but actually judging on the base of the law. Is that right?
Yes, it's changed through the years. At times it's partisan race, at times it's nonpartisan. And back in 2002, it became a nonpartisan race. So for the last 16, 17 years, it's been nonpartisan. And what that really means is that the candidates are not associated with a particular party. And so the goal of that is really to try to keep politics out of the courtroom and try to make the judicial candidates and the judges as impartial as possible. And so For the last 16 or 17 years ago, we've been a nonpartisan in the judicial races.
But that doesn't keep people from coming up and asking you, well, are you Republican? Are you Democrat? Are you independent?
Well, people can ask, but as a judicial candidate, you cannot affiliate with a party, which means you can't tell people whether you're Republican or Democrat, because the rules prohibit you from doing that. And again, it's really to try to have the public have more confidence in the judicial system and try to keep it where it's not looking partisan. And so it's a question that as a judicial candidate, I just can't answer that question.
Okay. So now, one of the things we talked about are different kinds of bonds that the district court judge actually oversees. Explain that process a little bit.
So district judges do more than just handle cases in the district court, which is misdemeanor court. One thing in Benton County that happens is that the 4 district judges who are elected, they do all the bond hearings at the Benton County Jail. So anybody that is being held at the Benton County Jail and is not being cited out but being held for a bond hearing, all those people will see a district judge. And so every single day, a district judge is in the Benton County Jail having bond hearings. And so what typically that involves is that the law enforcement agency will prepare an affidavit of probable cause, which gives a narrative of the facts, and the judge will then review that affidavit, which has been notarized. And so the bond recommendation will come from a prosecutor, and then the judge will then make his independent determination of what the bond will be. And so I was a deputy prosecutor for 15 years. So for my 15 years at the prosecutor's office, I would make the bond recommendation. It would show up on the affidavit, but then it's the judge that makes that final determination.
Okay. And so one of the things about this particular position is it's mainly going to be based in Siloam Springs. But because it's a Benton County jurisdiction, you don't actually stay in Siloam Springs the whole time. That may be where you're kind of headquartered out of, I guess you could use that phrase, but you kind of would go all over the county. Is that right?
Correct. The judge's office is in Siloam Springs, and his main courtroom is in Siloam Springs. However, there are more than just 4 courtrooms in Benton County, and so the district judges are also covering courts like in Centerton, in Little Flock, in Bella Vista. And so the Siloam judge at this time is handling the criminal court in Bethel Heights, and then is also doing the civil court in Rogers. And so as a district judge, it doesn't matter what district you're in, you're going to be doing more than just your own courtroom. And presently there's 4 district judges, and there's one based in Rogers, one in Bentonville, one in Gentry, which is called Benton County West, and then one in Siloam Springs.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit more personal about you, because you have kind of an interesting story in that you went to law school and then you started working as a police officer.
That's correct. I graduated from law school back in 1993, and in 1996 I joined the Siloam Springs Police Department. So for 7 years I was a police officer and then a detective, and during that time I worked the night shift just like everybody else, but after a few years I worked myself into the criminal investigation division, the detective division. And so for most of my time I was a detective there, working crimes as a detective.
Okay. So how did your law experience with the education and stuff, now that you had your attorney license, that had an impact on how you treated scenes as an officer?
Well, it gave me an advantage from the day you hit the street as a patrol officer. There's a lot to learn in law enforcement. You want to know the streets, you want to know the community, but you also want to know the law. And so it gave me a head start on people, on other officers, because I had that background. And so what it allowed me to do was to be able to have that head start on the criminal law side, it just kind of gave me that advantage where then I could even spend more time on learning the community and the streets and the business owners. And so as a police officer, it's not just about knowing the law. You really want to know the people that live and work in the community. And so after the 7 years, actually, in 2003, on a Friday, I turned in my badge and my gun, and 2 days later, I was then sworn in as a deputy prosecutor at the Benton County Prosecutor's Office. And so then, after my years in law enforcement, I spent 15 years at the prosecutor's office, and I was actually there under 5 elected and appointed prosecutors. So I was there under Bob Balfe, Robin Green, Van Stone, Jim Clark, and Nathan Smith.
Okay. So a few names that we actually know today, because Robin Green is actually a circuit court judge right now, isn't she?
Yes, so Robin Green is the circuit judge in Division I at the county courthouse.
Okay. So having had that law enforcement experience, that kind of helps you to relate when officers and stuff bring different cases to the court. You can actually kind of put yourself in their shoes.
Exactly, and I understand as an attorney or as a judge, you're able to hear the testimony or read a report in a calm environment, and if need be, take time to review it and reflect on it. However, many times as a police officer, I had to make those same decisions in a matter of seconds or minutes, and so I understand that as an attorney, I have maybe time to really reflect and think about it over time. But I understand as officers, they're really making a lot of quick decisions, and they're doing it out on the street. They're doing it with a lot of things going on, or maybe they're on the side of the road and there's traffic going by. So, I mean, I understand the challenges and the difficulties of being a police officer, and that, of course, doesn't change the law, but it does give me a perspective of how it is more difficult to make split-second decisions, and I understand that.
Okay. Now, a lot of people have a hard time taking that guy or that woman that's in a black robe behind this big bench and saying, hey, they're just normal people. But you do a lot of things with your family and in the community also, don't you?
So in terms of being an Siloam Springs district judge, if I were to be in that position, I'm a third-generation resident of Siloam Springs. My dad grew up there, and he still lives there today. And I've been involved with the community. I went to high school there. I went to John Brown University and graduated from there. But I'm also raising my 2 kids there. So I have an 11-year-old named Nicholas and a 14-year-old named Isabella that I'm raising with my wife in the community. But I've really enjoyed the opportunity to be involved with the community through the sports leagues. I've coached my son in several sports, and currently I'm still coaching him in soccer. So that really gives me the opportunity to interact with kids his age and get to know people in the community that I wouldn't know other than through the sports leagues. And so for me, I have a real interest in being involved with the youth of the community. I'm going to be raising my children there. I like to know the kids that my kids go to school with, and so I'm involved with the Siloam Springs community in many different ways.
Okay. And going back to the police experience a little bit, how involved are you with the officers that do patrol that area now?
And you know, some of the officers that are with Siloam Springs Police Department are officers that were there when I left back in 2003. But it is a small town in Siloam, and so I do know several of the officers, especially the school resource officers, because when I was with the prosecutor's office for several years, I supervised the juvenile division. And so being the prosecutor over the juvenile division, I definitely got to know the school resource officers very well. And so even though I may not know every officer on the force just because of the turnover, I do know several of them.
Okay. Any last reflections on what you would like to get out to the people about your campaign?
Well, first of all, I would just like to say that I truly love Benton County. It's a special place for me and the communities of Benton County. This is where I want to raise my family, and that's the first thing I would like everybody to know. But second of all, I understand the importance of the judge being a representative of the community and how important it is that the judge be impartial and be fair, and that he also follow the law. And so that would be the two main things that I would want the community to know.
Okay. Well, I appreciate you being here with us, AJ. So if, again, and what's the website that they can go to learn more about you and your campaign?
So they can go to ajanglinforjudge.com, and the election is on March the 3rd, which is the presidential primary date, but early voting starts on February 18th.
Okay. So whether you vote on a Democrat or Republican primary ballot, this judgeship contest will be on that ballot. So definitely get out and vote. Check out both candidates again on their websites. And AJ, we appreciate you being here today.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate it.
Okay. And we thank you all for joining us for the city, and we will see you next time.
You've been watching The City from our studio in the highlands of Bella Vista. If you have topics you would like to see us explore, just let us know. Thank you for tuning in. This has been a production of Bella Vista Community Television.